Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has changed his training regimen for this offseason. He's staying in Florida all offseason long, and he wants to be ready to go come spring training for the Toronto Blue Jays. This is pretty big news, and his success going forward is going to determine a lot whether or not the Blue Jays make a good run in the postseason or whether or not they come up short yet again. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, we've been talking about Vladdy all year long, and for a lot of wrong reasons, okay? He's been underperforming. He's been kind of unserious on the base paths. You know, he hasn't looked like his old self at all this year, and the year before as well. We were saying he was going to have a bounce back season. It didn't happen. He actually had a worse season than he did the year prior. Now, for the Blue Jays to do anything of significance going forward, whether it be in the regular season or the playoffs, Vladdy is going to have to figure this thing out. Now, he's got the talent to be generational. He's got the talent to be a top 5 hitter in the game, but he hasn't been anything close to that over the course of the past 2 years here. So, Nick, something's got to change here with Vladdy, and he's taking the right steps to try to make that happen.
Yeah, an interesting report came out from Shada V, which we'll get to in a second. Before we do, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Your support's been great, and we're on the road to 10,000. Now, Peter, I'm going to bring you back in memory lane a little bit, and I know a lot of Jays fans won't want to see this, but it all kind of, stems back to a degree, was the big pickoff play that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got cut up in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series. Now, everyone's over this now, but it kind of goes to show that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. needs to make an improvement on the hitting side, but as well on the base running side, the defense side of the mental side as well. And he's trying to, do that. He's making steps to hopefully do that. As in an article by Shai Davidi posted about a week ago, it said, quote, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who this offseason is training for the first time with Nicole Gabriel, a Tampa-based trainer who also works with Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia, among others. Now, that is interesting for the Jays. And he kind of goes on to describe in the article that a bit of a change of his, usual plans. Like you said in the intro, he's staying in Florida, which was much different than he did last year and the previous years. We all know how good Adolis Garcia and Randy Arozarena are. Now, is this big news? Who knows how it'll actually translate? We've seen players go and do things like this before and it not really translate. But the fact that he's at least trying to make changes, trying to hopefully get, maybe in better game shape, mentally, physical shape, even depending on what his goals are, it's pretty big news. And I'm just happy to see that it seems like he has the mentality that he wants to get back to the player he was in 2021.
Yeah, in 2021, you could see that he took that off season personally because he underperformed in that shortened COVID season. And there was a lot of talk about him, is this guy on the same level as Bo Bichette? Is he able to be a franchise player? And I'm sure he heard all that noise. And he had another below average season. It was his kind of second full year in the big leagues, and he didn't make any strides. He kind of just had the same kind of production that he had in the year before. So he heard all that. He heard people questioning his work ethic and whether or not he could play third base and all that stuff. So he took it personally. He came in a lot thinner in 2021. And now it seems like he kind of gained that weight back a little bit, and he wasn't in the same shape that he was in 2021. So if he can get back to that, you could see that his bat speed was a lot quicker in 21. His reaction time was just a lot better, and he just looked like a more complete player. He was able to run the bases with more speed, with more success as well, and he was better defensively. He was making those plays that we've seen Vladdy make over the past couple of years. So he does have to work a little bit harder this offseason. He's got to get back to that 2021 shape. I'm not saying he's got to duplicate those numbers. So be somewhere in the ballpark, though. Maybe 35 to 40 home runs, maybe a 280, 290 average. Just make an increase from what we saw last year. And that's what I want to see from Vladdy, some progression, because he's still very young.
Yeah, and again, 2021 was obviously the crazy, weird year. They played in Florida for a while. And then 2022, even looking back at it now, during the 2022 season, we kind of thought that he underperformed a little bit. But compared to what he did last year, 2022 was still a very, very solid season. And looking at his stats, and you kind of highlighted it, he's had an interesting career so far, his short 5-year career, regarding his hitting. Obviously, 2021 was, I guess, kind of the anomaly out of his 5 seasons at this point. He only has 2 seasons with above an 800 OPS. But the thing is, we all know, everyone knows the tools are there for Vladdy. The bat speed is there. He still smokes the ball as hard as anyone in baseball. It's just a matter of getting the launch angle up. And a big thing last year, which we kind of noticed towards, the end specifically, is that his eye was not, when Vladdy's swinging at pitches outside the zone, it completely, gets to his head, and then it disrupts his approach both in the field on the defensive end and his next at bat into the next game. And when we could see it here, he ended up not having a phenomenal, power season compared to what a lot of us suspected with only 26 home runs. And he struck out, a decent amount. But the thing was, he obviously is not a strikeout hitter, so he's not going to put up crazy strikeout numbers. So when he's swinging at pitches outside the zone, the level he was last year, it completely disrupts the rest of his approach and will make him roll over a ground ball as opposed to hitting it into the stand. So that's a big thing he needs to adjust. And I think a lot of that comes with confidence, and hopefully he can get some of that heading into next season.
You could tell that he was pressing
Yeah.
all season long, and he was trying to make things happen. We saw him early in spring training. He was smoking the ball. He was taking his walks. Even early on in the year, he was taking his walks. In the first 10 games, he had a on-base percentage nearing 500. He was looking like a totally different hitter, a guy that was going to take what was given to him, and when he got his pitch, he wasn't going to miss it. But as the season rolled on, he saw the offensive struggles that the Jays were having. Varsho was underperforming, and he was hitting in the 4 spot early on in the season. Bo was doing well, but George Springer was underperforming. Everyone was underperforming, and who was everyone blaming? Who were we blaming? We were looking right at Vladdy. We were saying, buddy, you got to do more. You can't keep rolling over ground balls. You can't keep swinging at bad pitches. You got to carry this offense. You got to be the one that takes them to the promised land. And I'm sure he felt that. He felt that kind of pressure, and he would get to a 2-0 count. He would get to a 3-1 count, and he'd swing at a slider low and away. That's 2 inches off the plate. You're not going to do much damage with that. It doesn't matter how talented you are. So you got to be very selective out there in the box. Vladdy has shown that he has the ability to do that. He's a very smart hitter when he is locked in, but when he's not locked in, he makes a lot of poor decisions out there in the box, and that can't keep happening for him because his numbers are going to keep looking like that if he's swinging at bad pitches.
Yeah, and the pressure's all on, he has the most pressure probably among all of, just because of, his dad and the way he was the top prospect in baseball. And also the Jays were losing last year, which of course didn't help with the whole pressing thing. The whole team was pressing to a degree. We saw Matt Chapman struggle, basically after the first month of the season. And like you said, even though he had a horrible year, he still was an above league average hitter. The defense was an issue. And he does not, strike out a lot ever. So it's good to see that at least he kept that side of his game. Everyone on a crazy streak earlier in the year where he didn't strike out in 32 straight at bats or something crazy. But looking at the difference here between 2022 and even just 2023, because there's not that big of a difference if you look at all regarding the Baseball Savant, the underlying metrics. The biggest difference here would be the defense. And Peter, just before we wrap up, did you see a notable difference in the defense compared to his 2022 Gold Glove season, where he still put up a negative 4 outs above average? Now, it's at first base, so the numbers are really skewed and weird for this, compared to last season where he was first percentile, meaning he was the worst in baseball at first base according to this outs above average, not defensive runs saved, which you can depend on your metrics. But the consensus was his footwork was bad, his defense was not great this season. I didn't notice it being completely terrible, though I did notice him missing a good few, plays that he used to make back here in 2022.
Yeah, he was jumpy. He was very jumpy at first base, and you got to react last second at first base. You got to stretch to the throw, and he wasn't really doing that. He was kind of just stretching and then flailing his arm out to try to catch the ball, and he didn't look comfortable over there at first base. He made a lot of routine mistakes that he didn't make in the year prior, and he was statistically the worst defensive first baseman. I mean, I don't want to put too much into that because, like you said, the numbers are skewed, and he did make some phenomenal plays, but it wasn't a Vladdy type season in all facets of the game. He was just unfocused all season long, and I'm glad to see that he's taken the steps here. He was unfocused in the batter's box. He was unfocused on defense, and it just carried over into every aspect of his game, and that just can't be happening. Not for a guy that is expected to be the guy for this team. And one more thing on his hitting, Nick, and I know we talked about this all year long. He just didn't pull the ball. You know, he was getting it in the air. The launch angle was better than it was last season. He was actually hitting the ball in the air more if you look at the advanced metrics, but he was hitting everything to center field, to right field. That could also be an approach thing. You know, that could be something that was drilled into these Blue Jay hitters by the coaching staff. None of them have been fired yet, which is a surprise to me, but I'm expecting some changes on that front, and I'm expecting a change in approach for all of these guys to tap back into that power that they have. It's it's great that you're smoking the ball 110 miles an hour off the bat, but you're hitting it to center field. You're hitting it to the wrong part of the ballpark, and you're not going to hit too many home runs in that direction. Obviously, you might get some gappers every now and then. You might get a couple of doubles, and that'll help your numbers out a little bit, but you want to be pulling that ball. You want to be tapping into that power as much as you can if you're Vladdy, and as much as you can if you're any other Blue Jay hitter. So that's what I'm looking out for this offseason. Pull the ball, pull it in the air, do some damage on those pitches that are right there.
Yeah, and ultimately, Vladdy will carry this team. Whether they win the World Series in the next 3 years largely depends on, of course, the construction of the team, but he's kind of the leader of that given his ability to carry a team. And this was 2022. You can see all the pulled balls compared to last year, which I don't have the spray chart there, but you can go look at that. You can almost guarantee that team-wide, there was a lot less pulling and more opposite field hitting, which could be attributed to the coaching staff, or maybe it was just one of those weird baseball years. But that'll wrap up the video. Hopefully Vlad and other, it was just such a weird year last year that I'm almost ready to put it behind and just hope that next year some major things change, and hopefully that Vladdy, working with some new coaches staying in Florida, will help him perform better. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.